Following a historic conviction last week on 34 counts of falsifying business records, former President Donald Trump is seeing an unprecedented amount of support as he's vowed to fight the conviction against him. This was the reaction to his appearance at UFC 302 in New Jersey over the weekend.
President Trump, you're the man, bro. It is a travesty what they're doing to you.
It's that kind of enthusiasm that apparently translated into a huge financial win for the Trump campaign in the hours after the verdict, perhaps a response from donors Democrats were not expecting.
The American people have really spoken up. And Casey, they've spoken with their wallets and their pocketbooks, even in a time where our economy is in such bad shape, thanks to horrific policies by Joe Biden. The American people came out, and in 48 hours after Donald Trump's verdict was read, our campaign and the RNC raised $70 million in digital fundraising. This is small dollar donations.
Laura Trump went on to say 30% of those donations were from people who had never given to the campaign before. If House Speaker Mike Johnson and other Republicans have their way, New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg will testify before Congress about his falsifying business records case against former President Trump.
What happened to President Trump is lawfare. There's no other way to describe it. They went after the Democrat Party and they used the system of justice to go after a political opponent. I think that this will probably guarantee that President Trump is reelected president. And I think their strategy is going to backfire on them.
House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan of Ohio sent a letter to DA Bragg and prosecutor Matthew Colangelo last week demanding the two testify before the Weaponization of Federal Government Subcommittee on June 13th. And they want answers on whether former President Donald Trump's guilty verdict was politically motivated.
We're going to drag at least attempt to drag Alvin Bragg in before the Weaponization Select Committee in the House to answer for this. And the rogue prosecutors, we're going to have them come in and try to explain to us how this is fair.
Speaker Johnson went on to say that he believes the Supreme Court should possibly step in. Greg.
So what's going on with the justice system in our country? Last week, a Manhattan jury found the presumptive Republican nominee for president in 2024, Donald Trump, guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records, charges that most certainly would not have been filed had the former president chose not to get into the 2024 race. Former judge and Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert was the guest on the Furthermore podcast with Amanda Head last week and commented on what has become our country's judicial system.
I don't know that anybody is more offended than I am at the way some of these federal judges and state judges in New York, Atlanta have weaponized the system and allowed politics to dictate things.
Gohmert went on to say the judicial system has always been a safety net to keep our country from going too far wrong, but that no longer appears to be the case.
And now that we have a head prosecutor in the country that is so weaponized, that has been turned, not completely, but turned to the dark side of Merrick Garland. He's gone against the things he believed in his whole career. And you have judges that have abandoned any pretense of being fair and even-handed.
The former judge also talked about while on the House Judiciary Committee, he tried to hold hearings for judges who were not operating to the judicial standard of, quote, in good behavior, but he was unsuccessful. So let's talk with the co-host of John Solomon Reports and the host of the podcast Furthermore, Amanda Head. Amanda, welcome back to Victory News.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. Great interview with Louis Gohmert. The Hunter Biden trial is underway right now. Justice system is one of the pillars of absolute fairness, blindness in America. It's not like you can go get another justice system if this one doesn't work. Is justice still blind, or has it been weaponized?
No, it is no longer blind. The scales of justice are no longer equal. And I found it very telling that DA Alvin Bragg consistently said over and over again, without fear or favor, this phrase that means clearly absolutely nothing to him. But I will say it's going to be a pretty rough summer for Joe Biden as a result of his son, Hunter Biden, because he's got the gun trial in Delaware. Soon after, he's going to be heading out here to Los Angeles for his tax case. And all of this is percolating during a summer where we are looking at amazing poll numbers for President Trump, especially in light of this conviction. As you guys were just talking about on air, over $200 million for President Trump. And you also aired the clip from UFC. I am a UFC fan as a result of my husband. And there are a lot of liberals out there who, Sean Strickland was the guy that you showed on the screen, and a lot of liberals will say, oh, well, obviously he's a white guy, of course. But I'll tell you this, Kevin Holland, who's black, ran over and shook the president's hand and had a very warm exchange with him. On top of that, Khabib Nurmagomedov, who is Muslim, went up to President Trump and said, I know you're going to stop the war in Palestine. And President Trump said, yes, I will. President Trump is seeing people come out of nooks and crannies, especially from communities that feel like they have been victims themselves of the justice community. And it's bearing out in practically every poll you see.
Okay, to your point, Congress has now asked DA Alvin Bragg to testify in Congress. Speaker Johnson is asking the Supreme Court to step on the Trump verdict. Is it the best interest of America for the Supreme Court to step in, for example, as they did with Bush v. Gore?
Yes. So in order for that to happen, the Trump campaign will have to file an emergency injunction. So something similar to what we saw with the ballot removal trial. As soon as that was moving down the path that it was, in light of the dates of the GOP primaries, the Supreme Court agreed to take that up. And I think that in the same fashion, in the same vein as that, the Supreme Court should. I think that they will be amenable to that, considering the repercussions of what this means for the candidate. And obviously, many people have talked about the layers upon layers of appeal available to the president. But New York has an interesting system where you kind of have this overlap of their appellate court system and their New York Supreme Court system, their state Supreme Court system. So if they went the normal route to go to the state Supreme Court of Appeals, it would take longer. So the Supreme Court, in my opinion, should take this up immediately, not the least of which is the fact that the president doesn't even know what he was charged for. Our Bill of Rights allows for a defendant to know what they were charged for, and none of us even know that. Still, with the jury instructions, we still have no idea.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. You're less than a minute here, Amanda. You had a political pollster, Scott Rasmussen, on Just the News, No Noise with John Solomon. What did he tell you he thought the potential effect would be on Donald Trump's numbers in November? Under a minute here.
So he said that he thought that this bump for President Trump after the conviction doesn't have much of a shelf life. I'm a little dubious of that, but Scott is the authority on this. But I think that Americans will remember. I think that the days of political amnesia for Americans are probably far gone. The most interesting thing that he told us, though, is that 82% of the top 1% of income earners in this country think that the rest of the country thinks like they do. And that is why we are in this situation where you have liberals who think they can do no wrong.
And very interesting. That's very telling. Amanda, thank you so much. Back to you in just a moment.